Hey everybody, what's up? Okay, so as you may or may not know, I was contacted a while back by a dude named Nadir, and he's been on the Gin and Tonic show a while back, and he's a Muslim apologist, and he approached me and said he wanted to have a nice little conversation, and I said yes, because that's kind of what I do, and so I'm here to update you on what happened in the conversation that I've been having with him. So, as you may recall, he presented the first proof of Islam, which was a prophecy, which I've already told him that the only prophecies that I'm accepting at this point, because his entire argument hinges on it, is prophecies where the best and most likely explanation is Muhammad got his information from an angel who got his information from God, and since neither one of those two things has been proven, I told him I don't see how there's any possible way he's ever going to prove that that was the most likely scenario, but that's an argument from ignorance, and I'm not going to put that forward as an argument. I was just saying I don't see how he's going to do it, so I'm waiting for him to actually present me with the, argument and evidence that leads to that conclusion. So anyway, his first evidence or proof, air quotes, I use the term evidence, lightly, is, Muhammad predicted that the Jews and the Muslims would fight in the future, and it would be sometime around the end times, which brings up another problem, because how do we know, the Muslims and Jews are fighting each other and there's a wall involved? But we still gotta wait for the end times to know that it was close to the end times. So even if the Jews and the Muslims are fighting each other and there's a wall involved, it still doesn't count until the end times happen, and it's like, okay, he was right, it happened close to the end times, because the Jews and the Muslims could fight around a wall, and then 50, million years could pass by, and still, didn't have the Armageddon thing, so the prophecy's just wrong. So I told him, the only way to prove this one is to wait for the end of the world for him to go, see, I told you, they fought and it was close to the end of the world. But by that time, who cares? It's the end of the world. So, bleh. But anyways, so his whole thing was Muhammad predicted that they were going to use a wall, and that walls just were never used in battle before Muhammad, and that this was just, impossible for him to know that in the future the Jews and the Muslims were going to be, fighting around a wall. It was just so unlikely that the only explanation, I guess, is magic. Well, in fact, there's, way more probable things out there, like, he guessed luckily, or, people were using walls and he knew about that and said, we're probably going to be fighting with these people in the future, seeing as how our religion tells us to fight with these people. And, the future's going to happen. So, that, pretty easy to guess that too. And that there's going to be a wall involved, yeah, most likely. And then he shoots back and he's like, well, you must understand that, blah, 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 that most of the time they don't build a wall. They instead build a fortress to have wars and battles and things like that. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let's say that the Jews build a fortress. Are you telling me this fortress doesn't have any walls? Are you telling me that if they had built a fortress and were fighting from behind the fortress that you wouldn't go, aha, see, the fortress has walls, and therefore, they're fighting from behind a wall, and blah, 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 blah. It was like, so fortresses have been used many times before Muhammad, but walls weren't used before Muhammad. And it's like, are you telling me that before Muhammad, walls were not part of fortress structures, that fortresses were just there and they didn't have any walls around them, that, cities didn't erect walls for protection from invaders? Come on. This is BS. And so I told him, I was like, I can not only prove that people had been building walls before Muhammad for battle, I can prove that people were in fact making predictions about people using walls for battle in the future. That in fact Muhammad was not the first one to predict people in the future going to war and there being a wall involved. that in fact walls were, used before Muhammad, and it was common knowledge, and even making predictions about walls being used in battle was, predates Muhammad by like, I forget, almost 1,000 years or some ridiculous number like that. If it's a 4 something BC and Muhammad was around like 600, so almost 1,000 years. Okay, I got 3 words that'll prove that not only were walls around before Muhammad and they were used in battle, but I can prove that people were making predictions about people using walls in battle. Okay, the 3 words, ready for them? Oracle of Delphi. That's right, Oracle. I hope you know how to spell that. Of Delphi. Delphi. It's Greek. It's ancient Greek. Okay, if you guys don't know about this, the oracle that Delphi predicted, and I don't think she had any magical powers either. I don't think she had angels or messengers from the gods from Mount Olympus or any of that stuff. I think she just made a really likely prediction. And because, she casted such a wide net, it came true because it was most likely going to come true. She predicted that the Persians and the Greeks were going to go to war with each other. And this wasn't a big surprise because, war had been looming on the horizon for a while, and everyone kind of knew it. And, it was kind of put out there that there was going to be a war with Persia eventually. So the Greeks knew about that shit, and that the war would be decided on a single wooden wall. Now everyone assumed that the single wooden wall she was talking about, I think this was a prediction specifically made for the city of Athens, but I don't even know that much. All I know is she made a prediction, and it was about a wooden wall, and that the single wooden wall would be the deciding factor between Greeks and Persians. And guess what? A Persian army came to the Greeks, and they had it out, and it wasn't the wooden wall of Athens. I think there was like a single wooden wall left on that the city hadn't replaced. That there was a single wooden wall in Athens that was still there from the beginning of Athens, or from whenever the wall was constructed, and everyone assumed, the single wooden wall she was talking about was that. Well, in fact, they all interpreted it later as, it was the wooden wall of ships, because the battle really wasn't decided on land. It was decided, it was a naval battle that pretty much decided the fate of the Greeks and Persians at that point in time. So, all of a sudden it was the great, the wall of wooden ships. Oh, that's the wooden wall she was talking about, which is just complete bullshit. That's just, post hoc, rationalization to, oh yeah, she was right after all, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, she said a wooden wall. She didn't say anything about boats or water or none of that stuff. But, they counted it as a hit anyways, which is exactly what Nadir is doing with the Quran. And I brought up another point with him, which was, he links me to his website that has a bunch of stuff in the Quran, and I can't help reading the stuff above and below, the specific, thing that he sent me to. And he sends me to all these prophecies that have a very high likelihood of coming true, and then he's like, see, the prophecy came true, isn't that amazing? And I'm like, no, it's not amazing, because he casted a really wide net and only predicts things that are really likely to come true. And in fact, the Muslims kind of make this a self-fulfilling prophecy, because their own book tells them to go out and try to convert everyone, and if you need to start a war, to get that shit done, then do it. Whatever you need to do to get people to Islam, because it's better than having them suffer for an eternity in a hell that their God invented and is going to torture them in. We got to save them from God by getting them to understand how much God loves them. Go figure. Go figure. Love is, you either love me or I torture you in the basement forever. But whatever. But anyways, So I brought up another point with him, which was, I've noticed that some of these things that you send me, like, they have a very high likelihood of coming true, and in fact, a lot of them are true. But then I read some of the things above and below the prophecies that you send me, and it's different prophecies. And some of these other prophecies are like, horses will never be used in battle. Well, what? Horses will never be used in battle? Are you telling me that horses weren't used in battle before Muhammad? Okay, maybe. I haven't personally gone out and looked up the history of horses in warfare, but are you telling me that the Quran, in fact, that Muhammad in the Quran, in fact, predicts that horses will never be used in battle? Because I know that they have been used in battle. I know that they've been used in battle. Okay, haven't you ever heard of, like, charge, the cavalry? What was the cavalry riding on? What did the cavalry ride on into battle? Could it have been horses? I think it might have been horses. What was Alexander the Great famous for having in his army? What was so revolutionary about Alexander the Great's army compared to a lot of other armies at that time? What was it again? Oh, could it have been horses? Yeah, that's right, horses. And then his website says, the Quran doesn't actually say that, that horses will never be used in battle. Even though if you read it, that's clearly what it says. It in fact says, what the Quran means to say is that horses will never actually go into battle, but they will be used to carry goods and supplies to people that are going to battle. So they'll kind of be involved in battle, but they won't actually ever go into battle. And that, again, is just wrong, 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 wrong. Horses have been used in battle for a long freaking time. I mean, come on, haven't you ever, the Knights of the Round Table, haven't you ever seen a jousting tournament or anything like that? I mean, come on, horses? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. When he shows me these prophecies in the Quran, and I've called him out on this, and he just blatantly ignores the point completely, I'm like, you are instituting confirmation bias, okay? I said this in my first video, that this was most likely what was going to happen, and surprise, I was right, okay? He is going out of his way to only show me the prophecies that in fact came true, and all the prophecies that are a little bit off, well, those are wrong because, the people screwed them up, or, what the Quran meant to say was this, or, we can twist this in a way to where it actually did kind of happen the way it was prophesized in the Quran. No, okay, that is called confirmation bias. You are seeing all the hits and going, hey, look at all these hits, and you're ignoring all the misses. Anything that would disconfirm the thing that you've already decided is right, you just ignore that completely. And I already know what he's leading up to. He's leading up to, this prophecy is true, and this prophecy is true, and this prophecy, and this prophecy, and this prophecy, and blah, 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 and all these prophecies. Soon we're going to have an entire forest of prophecies. How could you possibly deny, when confronted with this entire forest of prophecies, that this is wrong? Sure, maybe, okay, fine, this one over there doesn't count, and that one over there doesn't count, but there's so many of them. How can you deny that at least some of them have to be right, and therefore proving the case? And it's like, no, each one of these is wrong also helps to disprove the case. And it turns out that when we focus in hard enough on each one of these individual trees that makes up the forest, turns out they're just cardboard cutout trees. They're not real trees. It just looks like a forest because he's presented a bunch of things that look like trees. But when you focus in on them real hard, you find out they're not trees. It was fake. And if you got one, You can't have a whole bunch of evidence if you don't have one single piece of evidence, but somehow, without having one single piece of evidence, we're going to have an entire forest worth of evidence at the end of this. So he's telling me stuff like, after I show you enough prophecies, the likelihood of him guessing this will go down, and the likelihood of him getting this from God goes up. And I'm like, well, yeah, the likelihood of him guessing it goes down, but you've got a long way to go before you're going to say that the most likely scenario is he got this information from God, because we need to prove, first of all, that there's a God to get this information from, 2, that he actually communicates this information to us, and 3, he was actually doing it with Muhammad through an angel. So, bully to you, because I don't know how you're going to do that one, but I, love seeing you try. So anyways, confirmation bias being instituted to the highest degree, and I've pointed out several logical fallacies that he's using. I've pointed out how, these prophecies are by definition not miracles, because they don't defy anything, and he's completely stayed away from trying to say that it's a miracle. And I'm like, dude, let's assume that Muhammad made 100 prophecies in the Quran and 100 of the prophecies are correct. Okay, what is the next stage of your argument exactly? Because it should follow that, Muhammad's getting this information from an angel, and he's going to somehow prove that, and that somehow the angel was getting his information from God, and he's going to prove that. And I'm waiting for him to prove that, but so far he has neglected to try to prove that. And I've called him out on it several times. It's like, dude, are you suggesting that in this case, the most likely scenario is he got this info from an invisible magic angel that was talking to him and no one else could see or hear it? Because, almost any other explanation is more likely than that one, because that one, goes against everything that we have previously established that is possible. So, I don't know what to say, but I look forward to continuing the conversation with Nadir, and I will keep you guys updated. Take it easy.